Thank you, Mr. Weiger. And back to the studio. With me here today are the two chairs of Thinknet 6G, who will provide technical input and guidance from both the research and industry sides. Allow me to introduce, on my left, your right, Peter Merz, who is the Vice President of Standardization and Research at Nokia Bell Labs. And my right, your left, Professor Wolfgang Kellerer, who is the head of the Institute of Communication Networks at the Technical University of Munich. Peter, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, great to be here. My name is Peter Merz. I'm at Nokia, responsible for standardization and industry engagement activities, including the related back-office research work. Personally, I had been deeply involved in several generations of mobile communications. I started with UMTS, then I did LTE. Now I'm involved in 5G and its evolution, and as we are standing here, it's time to start 6G again.
And Wolfgang.
Yeah, also warm welcome from my side. My name is Wolfgang Kellerer. I'm a professor at Technical University of Munich in the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering. I'm focusing on communication networks. I'm heading this chair, and I'm at university now a professor for 8 years. Before I had pursued an industrial career, so I have been a researcher and developer at NTT Docomo's research labs. So this is the Japanese mobile operator, and there I have worked a lot in the development of 4G. Later then we have prepared 5G, and now in my research labs I'm continuing with 5G at the university, and I'm also heading towards the 6G research. And Kim, what about you? Yeah. What is your background?
Okay. So, like I said earlier, my name is Kimberley Trommler. I've been at Bayern Innovativ for about 3.5 years now. You'll hear I don't have much of a German accent. I grew up in Canada and studied mathematics and computer science there. I've spent most of my career working on the infrastructure side of things, predominantly in network architecture and data centers. So, Peter and Wolfgang, I'm going to start the discussion with the first question that popped into my mind when I heard about 6G, and a question I have been asked 1,000 times since. Why are we talking about 6G when we don't even have 5G yet?
Yeah, Kim, that's a good question. So it's like a 10 years marathon race we are going to start to be ready by 2030. So first we need to do foundational research to see that we have the technology enablers at hand. Secondly, we need to see how those enablers are fitting well together to have a coherent system. And thirdly, we need to specify, standardize it when it comes to this point. Then we need to build it, to verify and to test it in order that it's commercially ready for prime time at 2030.
Okay. And Wolfgang?
Yeah, as Peter said, so sufficient and excellent research and development takes some time, and it also needs the right people to join together. So we need to bring the right stakeholders together in order to successfully conclude this endeavor. And stakeholders are not only the typical telecom operators or telecom manufacturers, but for 6G we are targeting at the whole society. This should be a benefit for the whole society. So stakeholders in particular include also the area of medical, transport, industry, and everybody that is benefiting from the future of communications.
Okay. What are the most important factors, in your opinions, that truly differentiate 6G from 5G? Obviously, 6G is a successor technology, but what will make 6G truly iconic? What makes it more than just faster with more bandwidth?
That's a very good point. So for me, the ultimate goal, what we should achieve with 6G is that we bring additional new value for societies, for industries, and for humanity. So what are we expecting? So 6G needs to leapfrog existing capabilities like speed, latency, and reliability, but it also needs to blend in new capabilities such as sensing or subnetworking.
Yeah, what I like to point out for 6G is that with 6G, we have the human users in the center. So whereas 5G, as we know, has focused on machine-to-machine communication, now in 6G we focus on the human user, and we say the human user in her or his intelligent interaction with the environment. So what does this mean? Now it's the user intelligently interacting with machines, but also taking, with sensors, the knowledge and the data of the environment into account in order to adapt the communication to the user's needs. What does that mean? Well, just imagine, for example, you are traveling, and the network already anticipates that you are entering an area of a low coverage, and then your favorite Netflix series are already pre-downloaded. Or imagine an ambulance is going to an emergency situation and a remote surgery has to be done. Then all the network connectivity and resources will be accumulated in order to support this emergency fully autonomously and automatically. Yeah, Kim, now I have a question for you. Why is the Bavarian government getting involved here? Why are they funding such a 6G community?
So why Bavaria? Well, I think one of the main reasons is simply to ensure that Bavaria remains a high-tech region for communication networks, yes, but also for important industries that rely on those networks. For example, two of the most important sectors in Bavaria, namely automotive and healthcare, both have important use cases that need 5G and then 6G. For example, for full autonomous driving, or for the example you mentioned earlier, remote surgery, which requires very precise positioning and also extremely low latency. And of course, there are always geopolitical aspects in the background. Technological sovereignty, for example, is a key issue. Bavaria can and must contribute to both German and European technological sovereignty goals.
Hey Kim, we're here to kick off Thinknet 6G, so how will Thinknet 6G contribute to those goals?
Okay. Well, there are several goals, and unfortunately, I don't have time to cover all of them here. They are listed on our website, but if I'd have to summarize, I'd say the single highest goal is to connect companies and institutions in Bavaria with each other, but also with potential partners in the rest of Germany, the rest of Europe, and internationally. So the key word here would be partnerships. And Bavaria has absolute world-class leaders to offer here, truly second to none. Rhoda and Schwarz, who are holding the keynote later, are a prime example. In addition, we'd like to reach out to companies who currently have nothing to do with wireless or 6G, but who could, and connect them to potential partners or market channels. As an example, you may have seen in the news recently that Apple is investing over €1 billion to expand their chip design center in Munich. Now, Apple will be focusing on the chips that go into the handsets, into the phones. But the industry is also going to need chips that go into the receivers and the antennas that those phones connect to. And don't forget all of the Internet of Things, IoT, and industrial IoT devices that will also need to be 6G enabled. Then perhaps more interesting to research institutions, Wolfgang. We'll support organizations in finding funding programs, applying for projects, and finding suitable partners for those projects. There are already 6G calls for proposals open, and we expect to see more soon. We'll keep you informed about those calls and help you find partners for consortia. Now, while we're on the topic of research, Wolfgang, can you tell us why Thinknet 6G is interesting to research institutes and why you agreed to chair Thinknet 6G?
Yeah. Thank you, Kim. Of course, and as I said, it's a pleasure for me to be here in this Thinknet 6G and to represent the 6G academia and research. But of course, for successful research, and this is what we all know, this cannot be done alone. So we need the right teams, we need the right partners, we need the right stakeholders in order to achieve a long-term impact for the society and also to go for standardizations. We need to understand the requirements from the different stakeholders in the society, and this can only be done together with those stakeholders in a close discussion and in close development. And last but not least, of course, as was mentioned by Mr. Weiger, there is also some money in, and we can also team up and find partners and go for some joint research. This was already mentioned. We are already at this stage where we are starting some collaborative research. So we are starting the 6G Future Lab Bavaria at Technical University of Munich, where 12 professorships are teaming up in order to do fundamental research on 6G, and this is also funded by the Bavarian government. Yeah, and by the way, when we talk about research and fundamentals, we also have 6 research and development domains identified for our Thinknet 6G, and this is what is then giving kind of the roadmap for our discussion in the Thinknet.
So, Wolfgang, could you expand a bit on what you mean by 6 domains for 6G?
Yes, of course. I should explain a little bit. Well, you can find the detailed description, of course, on our webpage. Let me briefly list them here so that we all know what we are talking about. And you will see them also on the slide that is being displayed now. So the first domain is artificial intelligence and machine learning native communication. Here the idea is that we use artificial intelligence in order to optimize our networking and also to make the network ready for AI and machine learning. Of course, also, when we come to a new generation, there is a new spectrum involved, new spectrum technologies in the sub-terahertz bands, for example, and that's why the second domain is new spectrum technologies. And of course, for every new generation, we are also getting into speed. Yeah, we are improving on the KPIs like latency, data rate, availability over the previous generation. Now with 6G, we go to extreme and energy-efficient connectivity, which is our third domain and which is setting the stage for new requirements and new capabilities. In order to tackle, in order to support those capabilities, the network in 6G should also adapt, as I have explained in my example before, to the environment in order to provide the right connectivity at the right time. So the network needs to adapt. That's why network adaptation is then the domain number 4. Domain number 5 is called the network as a multi-sensor. So here the network is acting as a sensor itself.
Yeah, hey Wolfgang, I already mentioned that sensing is a new capability of 6G. So do you have a concrete example for our audience?
Yeah, of course, this needs a bit more explanation because network as a sensor is a new point that comes in the 6G research. So for example, I'm doing now 5G research and development in my labs, and we are improving on the radio resource management on my base station. And what we would like to do now in 6G, we would like to expand this to add real-time information from the environment, from the sensors, and take it into account to improve the communication. This can, for example, be, as we have in our labs, images from cameras that are in their surrounding that discover persons and take this knowledge into account to improve the radio network management. I have not mentioned the 6th domain, by the way, and as we are talking about sensing and sensors, it's very natural that security, privacy, and trust play a big role here, and in fact, of course, it plays a big role for the whole 6G, and that's why security, privacy, and trust is the 6th domain that we are targeting at. Yeah, and the last 2 domains, network as a multi-sensor and security, privacy, and trust, are also the first 2 domains we start to discuss about in the progress of Thinknet 6G. So you will hear about the announcement of workshops where we also invite you to talk with us about network as a sensor and security, privacy, and trust.
So, Peter, you're here to represent industry with Nokia as one of the larger players. Can you tell us why you agreed to chair Thinknet 6G?
Yes, for sure, Kim. That was an easy and speedy decision for me because it's a sort of profit and fun to engage with the wider ecosystem. And that's the important thing because we are aiming for the greater good, and that means we are meeting with interested new parties, existing players. And what we are aiming for is that we sit together, we debate, we agree or we disagree in order to achieve the best outcome to see how 6G would need to be shaped up for 2030.
Okay. Nokia already has a lot of existing industry partnerships. The Hexa-X EU project is a good example. What do you expect from Thinknet 6G that you don't already have?
That's a good point. So you might have heard about the Hexa-X project, which recently started. It's a flagship project from the European Union. And it's in the good tradition, like we did, we had Winner for LTE, we had Metis for 5G, so where academia and industry is coming together in order to do technological research. What I expect from Thinknet 6G is that we augment and blend in additional perspectives from the industry and from the ecosystem players in order that we already know where we have the agreement or where we need to work on. And I think here in Bavaria, I think we are extremely well placed because it provides an excellent place to discuss. And I think it's an ecosystem which is second to none.
And we have one of the most important Bavarian players in wireless for our keynote today. Rohde & Schwarz is a technology and market leader in multiple fields, including wireless communications, radio frequency test and measurement, and network technology. Their headquarters is in Munich, and they have offices in 70 countries. Christian Leicher is the group president and CEO of Rohde & Schwarz, and we're very pleased to have him for the keynote today.